Silence. Oh, now we are. We're streaming now. So good evening, everyone, here in person and online. It's Monday, March 7th, and we do have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. I have one change to the agenda. Policy 613 needs to be removed from action and put into discussion. So given that change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We will now vote to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, tonight's agenda is approved. And Dr. Stanley, will you please quickly review tonight's agenda for us?
Absolutely. We are really excited to have students with us from Global, okay, I'm going to get that right, Global Studies? Scholars. Oh, I'm sorry, it just left my head, but I know it. Global Scholars here, and we're excited to hear from them. We will have time to hear from members of the public. We have a consent agenda. I am going to give an update on COVID, and we have some policies that we're going to review. We have some action items, and we're looking to approve a change in schedule for non-student day to a teacher day-to-day. We'll have updates from leadership and committee and from me.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. First, our Excellence in Action tonight. We're excited to welcome some of our international students who are attending Edina High School. So we have Mrs. Lindsay Smaka, who coordinates the school's international programs, to introduce her students and tell us more about this program. Welcome, Ms. Smaka. Welcome, students. Don't be shy. Come on up. We can get more chairs. Everyone come up. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello, everyone. Is that working? No. Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Smaka, and I am a teacher at Edina High School. I teach chemistry and science, and I also run our Edina Rotary Global Scholars Program and help coordinate our exchange students. So first off, about the Global Scholar Program. It's a 3 by Edina Education Fund and the Edina Rotary Club. What the goal is for students to develop global competency skills for post-graduation. We prepare them for a global career in this interconnected world, and we help them develop understanding for world issues, build bridges, and learn new cultures. At the end of graduation, there are scholarship opportunities, and they get recognized at graduation. Here is an overview of the program requirements. It's kind of small, but hopefully you can kind of see the headlines at least. So students choose a program of study, either STEM, fine arts, or humanities. They do that coursework from their 3 years on. They become proficient in a language other than English. Some students already come in with a language. Some students reach the highest level at the high school. They get involved in the Rotary, whether that's Interact Club, take part in an exchange program, or get involved in one of the camps. They also take part in a global collaborations experience, so that would be travel-based learning, or host an exchange student, or some other virtual options that we have developed over the past couple of years. And they take part in a Capstone Course. So this Capstone Course is a research course where they choose a global issue, and they look at it at a global level, at a country of their choice, and look at it at the local level here and do an internship or volunteer opportunity here in Edina. So this year, we are incorporating our exchange students into the program. And right now, we have 13 exchange students. And the represented countries are Brazil, Korea, Germany, Norway, France, Italy, Vietnam, and Denmark. So what we did was we paired Global Scholar students with these international exchange students and created a mentor program. Students have met about monthly during Flex usually, and connected, taught each other things about the U.S. and their home country. Some of my students, some of the Global Scholar students knows the language of the international students, so it's been really fun to hear all of these world languages being taught in my classroom, or being spoken in my classroom. Played games and just had really a great chance to connect. So now I'm going to pass the mic to each of the students, and they'll introduce themselves, what their role is, and a little bit about what they've learned and liked about the program so far.
Okay. Hi, I'm Vittoria. I'm from Italy, and I'm here. I arrived here like 7 months ago, so I have like 3 months left. The best part of my experience, well, there were a lot of things. Like I got the opportunity during the fall of joining the Edina volleyball team, and I got into varsity. So that was like one of the best things that I've done here. I got my first friends, and I'm still friends with them. And was like one of the best things. Then all the holidays, like the dances, Christmas, and yeah. After the New Year, I finally like got my first friends, American friends, and I'm starting to hanging out with them. And it's like one of the best things that I've done in my life. So yeah.
Hello, I'm Perny. I'm from Norway, and I also came here in August. I've been there for 7 months-ish, and going home in 3 months. My favorite thing is I met some very good friends I've gotten, and I did cross country during fall, and yeah, that was real fun. And the dances and stuff like that.
Hi, I'm Emma Rappellini. I'm not an exchange student, live here in Edina, but I've been a mentor with Vito and then also Federico, which is the new Italian exchange student. And I can also speak Italian, so it's really fun to kind of see them in the halls and be like, ciao, which is like hi in Italian, and just kind of, it's weird. It's like a environment switch because you're used to speaking English, obviously, in the United States, but yeah, and being a mentor has been cool. Just, yeah, I don't know. We've kind of, so far I'm in the Capstone project as I'm a global scholar and mentor, and starting to focus on some of the, like my projects on health and different vaccinations. So that's been cool.
Hi, my name is Jaden Young. I'm a global scholar and a mentor, so I've worked with Kat and a lot of the other students, and it's just been a cool program to get to meet new students and learn about different cultures, as well as kind of share parts of Edina and America that I really enjoy. So, yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kat, and I'm from Vietnam. I got here, last August, and I'll be leaving this summer, but I will most likely be going back to Edina next year. And I really like my experience here. It was like really new. It's so different, and I got different friends. I have overall the experience. I wouldn't have had this had I not gone, and I'm really excited for next year too. Like there are a lot of courses that aren't offered in Vietnam, like college level courses, and I'm excited for cybersecurity next year. I'm also doing badminton. They just started, and I'm finding it really fun. So that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Neela, and I'm from Germany. I kind of like had this idea of being an exchange student since like 5th grade or something, and now I just like finally realized it's just really cool, and you get to experience lots of new things. Like I was competitive swimming in the fall. I did Nordic in the winter, and I have never done Nordic before. Yeah, I know that I'm from Germany, but and right now I'm doing track, which just started too, and I just got lots of new friends, meet lots of new people, have an amazing family. So yeah, pretty good experience. I would certainly recommend to do it for everyone who likes to meet new things and do try out new things, new cultures, new language. It's like even weird hearing myself speak in German or text in German. So, yeah.
Thanks to all the students who came and were brave and spoke today, and thank you to the board for having us.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's nice to hear all of your experiences and appreciate you being here. We're going to move on to hearings from members of the public. And pursuant to Board Policy 206, we ask that you do not duplicate information that has previously been spoken before you. If you have a complaint about individual employees, board members, or students in the district, please direct any of these comments to the appropriate site administrator, the superintendent, or submit them in writing to the board. The board typically does not respond to or have discussions on any issues presented, but questions raised during presentations will receive follow-up as directed by the board. And I would just like to recommend or remind all speakers that presentations are limited to 5 minutes. We do have a display. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Sorry. That will let you know when your 3 minutes are up. So please finish at 3 minutes, not 5 minutes. Sorry about that. First up is Chris Moquist.
Thanks so much for your time. I'm here tonight to ask for your help and support to implement a plan to create an Edina district-owned transition program to serve our 18 to 21-year-old students after they leave Edina High School. For years, Edina Public Schools has farmed out these vital transition services to the District 287 Consortium or sent Edina students to other districts' transition programs. It's important for this board to understand that today, virtually all of our neighboring districts, districts that we compare ourselves to, and districts that are also members of 287, have already created and are already running their own transition programs for their graduates. Minnetonka has SAIL. Eden Prairie has Tassel. There's Wayzata Transition. The Bloomington Transition Center and Hopkins and Richfield have Transition Plus. As I mentioned, EPS contracts with a couple of these programs, but with the exception of 287, Edina students are only able to enroll in a program if space is available. When programs are full with students from those home districts, Edina students are simply out of luck. So the program may have space for just 2 EPS students, and we need to place 20. That seems to be a rather poor strategy. Each year, we are graduating 70-plus students receiving special education services, and those numbers continue to grow. I know Jeff Jorgensen has presented enrollment numbers which show the substantial increase in students receiving special education in Edina. While those students are in EPS, the significant investments we make in them make a huge difference. We have a culture here that is incredible. No other district provides what we have taken so much time, effort, energy, passion, and skill to build. We have the best special education teachers and staff members in the state, if not the country. And all of our students, all EPS students, reap those benefits. We also have, and we continue to expand, a culture of unified, bringing all students together. Students served by special education and students in general education, just like we all live in our world, together. That's simply how our students grow up, starting when they're in ECSE. In special education, EPS is truly defining excellence. That is, until our students graduate and reach transition. Today, because we don't have our own transition program, all of that vital unified programming ends immediately at graduation. And I can tell you from my daughter's personal experience, that is an abrupt, shocking, and painful change. Everything we build, all of our hard work, that powerful unified culture stops when we are not intentionally continuing that culture in a transition program that we develop, design, and run. I think I'm almost out of time, so thank you for your time and attention tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Moquist. We have Emmy Mastel. Are you two going to speak together?
We'd like to do it separately, but
Okay.
can Charlie go first?
Absolutely. And Charlie Mastel.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Mastel. I am a junior at Edina High School. I love school. My favorite class is biology. I love performing in free-for-all. If you know, attended our recent play, you will see how much I love wait, where am I again? Oh, I love performing, singing, and dancing. I also really like this Unified UPE and my Jesus in this class. I would love to see more Unified classes. One other thing that I really enjoyed this year was working with the Edina football team. I helped play by the end of the season. After high school, I plan to go to college. After college, I hope to career in career in performing field dance or having my own YouTube channel. I am grateful for my wonderful teachers like Miss Maddie, Miss Sifel, and all of the experiences I've had in my time at Edina Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mastel.
Dr. Stanley, Chair Allenberg, and other Edina School Board members, my name is Emmy Mastel, also known as Charlie's mom. As you heard, Charlie has big dreams and hopes once he leaves Edina High School. We feel Charlie's participation in general education classes, unified classes, as well as his special education programming has helped to foster these goals and provide skills to operate in the real world. We have always advocated for Charlie to first and foremost be seen as a student of Edina Public Schools, and secondarily as a student that receives special education services. We are happy to say that he thrives in his school community where he is fully included. There have been roadblocks along the way, like when we were told he should not attend his neighborhood school, or why would he choose to take Spanish? But under the leadership of the administrators like Jeff Jorgensen and some of the wonderful teachers that are here tonight, he has been fully included, and we have seen more access to opportunities than ever. So why am I here? Because I feel like this movement that we call Edina Unified is one of the best kept secrets in Edina. We should be telling this inclusion and unified story proudly. This is how we do it in Edina. The groundwork that these teachers have laid speaks directly to our district's strategic plan, ensuring an equitable and inclusive school culture. And yet, I don't see a section of our school website devoted to Edina Unified. I really don't see any representation of students with disabilities on our school site. I barely saw a mention on the school calendar of the recent Theater for All performance held in January. Telling our story not only encourages people to join this movement, it allows teachers, administrators, students, and other community members to think outside the box. We also know, by way of hearing from our students and families directly, that the Edina Unified Program is equally impactful to students with and without disabilities. So there's more work to be done. These unified champions here tonight, like Ms. Schaefer and Ms. Olson, have the specifics on how to make this program truly flourish across the district. They need additional time to collaborate, they need resources, and they need awareness at their school sites. Let's create an environment where inclusion is not only encouraged, but expected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that note, there is a fundraiser for Edina Unified, a polar plunge coming up at the end of March that a lot of people up here are going to be participating in. So if you'd like to support Edina Unified, you can look for more information about that. But thank you to all our speakers tonight. We are moving on to our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. We have two items for two discussion items tonight. First, we have a COVID-19 update with Dr. Stanley.
Good evening and thank you. I just want to say thank you also. The Unified program is absolutely amazing. I just feel like it's appropriate to say this at this time. Just came from working with a consortium of districts, of high-performing districts, and our focus was on our special education programs, and Jeff and Randy and I were there and had on our unified sweatshirts, and what was great is Jeff was talking about unified programming, and then we came out with our unified shirts, and they thought, how did you make those so quickly? That's what they asked us. We said, we're serious about this, so anyway, just thank you so much for coming this evening. So and actually, Dr. Smazel can come up as well, want to give an update on where we are at with COVID-19. And you may remember that on February 14th, made the recommendation that we would move to masks, strongly recommended. And we have been monitoring that since February 14th. Right now, about 40% of our students and several of our teachers continue to wear masks during the school day. I have a superintendent's leadership team at each one of our secondary schools, and I was with our Southview team, and I was so pleased to be in with the team. About half of the students had their masks on, about half of them did not, and felt very comfortable. I was able to check in, how are things going in schools? Do people ever question you? And they said no. They're not being questioned. They just know that it's their choice for if they want to wear it. And so I was really pleased to hear that. And so shortly after that, the CDC actually changed their guidelines around universal mask wearing, and there were some very specific statements that the CDC brought up. And before we move into where we're at with status around vaccinations and things like that, that Dr. Smazel will share, I really do want to be very specific and read this information out, because I know not everybody looks at the board packet. So the CDC states that with current high levels of vaccination and high levels of population immunity from both vaccination and infections, the risk of medically significant disease, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19 is greatly reduced for most people. They also state that COVID-19 community levels can help communities and individuals make decisions based on their local context and their unique needs. Community vaccination coverage and other local information, like early alerts from surveillance, such as those from wastewater, Many of you may have heard of some of that science, or the number of emergency department visits for COVID-19, when available, can also inform decision-making for health officials and individuals. And on February 14th, the information that we shared was related to hospital bed availability. We thought that that was very important. And consistently, throughout the school year, I've provided an update both on state, county, and city COVID transmission rates, as well as our ongoing local vaccination rates in the schools. I will say in Edina, our vaccination rates are superb. Most groups 18 or older are well into 95 to 98%. Our elders in the community, 65 plus, are at 98%, and that's something that we should be very proud of. In addition to that, you'll see a little bit later that our vaccination rates at our high school, at our middle school, and at our elementary school have gone up significantly. So there's some guidance that we receive from CDC if we are in medium or low transmission rates. And right now, the county is in medium. Some very specific information for what we should do. We need to make certain that we are watching out and taking care of our immunocompromised students, and there's some very specific steps that students and staff who are immunocompromised should follow. And then also within, if we are in, have a close contact, so close social contact, and we're at high risk, there's some very specific steps that we should follow when we're in the medium transmission rate, which, again, that is where we are at right now for the county. Now, what's interesting is when you think about the level of coverage of vaccination as well as the transmission rate for the city, we're starting to drop even lower. And so several weeks ago, we were at, I want to get this right, I had it in my head, but we were at 1,559 cases per 100,000. And situation update dropped back to 130 cases per 100,000 just last Thursday. So we are on the significant decline, and I think that that is for many reasons, including the level of vaccination and how serious we're taking this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Smazel to go over Edina case rates, Hennepin County case rates, school district, and then where we're at with absences.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. Board Chair Ellenberg, our school board members and community members. It's really important that we continue to monitor the community context and our school context around the COVID virus. And so I'm going to present to you a couple of patterns that we're seeing throughout the community and in our schools. So first of all, the Edina City case rates have continued to drop significantly, which is exciting, starting off in 336 cases back in early January to most recently 30 cases. And so across the city of Edina, these are 14-day trends, as you can see from the data. So again, the data is headed in a very positive direction for the school district. On the next slide, looking at Hennepin County case rates, a little bit broader, seeing that those case rates again went through a spike and are now returned to pretty low levels, 26.7 per 10,000. Again, monitoring that. Using our COVID-19 monitoring page to articulate and share with the community the percent of confirmed cases and quarantines that we have in our school district. And then, as Dr. Stanley mentioned, vaccination rates continue to go up. We see very high vaccination rates at the secondary level and vaccination rates continuing to climb at the elementary. But in addition to these vaccination rates, we also have many students who've been naturally immunized because they themselves have contracted the virus. So actually, our numbers of students who are protected are even higher than just the vaccination rates. We will continue to monitor attendance closely. We are looking for that factor of a double over historical attendance as something that grabs our attention and says, hey, we need to really look into that. We are seeing that there's a number of flu cases occurring across the school district, and so we're seeing a little bit of a bump in our attendance. So we did dive into our most recent attendance, knowing that it was right at that doubling limit for multiple elementary schools. And what we found was that those were almost entirely non-COVID related cases. We saw 2 COVID cases in 3 of the elementary schools, and so it's a very, very small number. But we will continue to monitor those percentages and make sure we're paying really close attention to the absence rate that we're seeing in schools.
Thanks, Dr. Smazel. One thing that we'd like to add, the CDC actually on February 25th changed their requirements related to buses as well. And, any federal transportation was at universal masking. And they changed that and downgraded that to not requiring universal masking. And so one of the recommendations that we have is that we would also move transportation to masking strongly recommended. So we would not downgrade below that. We'd keep the entire district and transportation at that level as well. Questions?
Yeah, do board members have questions or comments? I have a couple, but.
Yeah, I do too. Do you want to, you can go first.
Do we have a current status update of the number of COVID cases within the school system? Yes. And if you have to look it up, then I'll ask my second question, which is, have we seen an increase in the number of students being quarantined now that we've removed the masking, given that that was one of the things preventing us from having to quarantine students? So those are my 2 initial questions.
Good questions, and I did look them up. Right now, for quarantine, we have 2 students in quarantine right now. So we have not seen an increase. We have 1 student. We have 1 student at the elementary level. And there are 2 different reasons. One because of social setting exposure, and one because of school setting exposure. Our total cases across the district for new confirmed cases for last week were 15. During the height of Omicron, we saw many, many cases. We had 48 alone at the high school at one point, so significantly lower than they have been.
Okay, I'll let other people ask questions, and I can ask mine if they don't get asked. Go ahead, Julie.
Sure. Thank you. That's a great report. It's all great to hear. So, for a lot of reasons. My question has to do with, we've gotten some feedback too from community members about the Test to Stay program. And if you could give us a little bit of an update on how is that working? Is that, how is it working at the schools? Because I know there's a lot of layers to things.
Sure. So I kind of gave Director Jorgensen a nod, so he came right up. So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Jorgensen.
Just Jeff.
Just Jeff.
So, Director Green, thank you very much for asking the question. The Test to Stay model is still kind of in its formative stages yet, but we haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to test because the contraction rate has been so low. We have not had to implement much Test to Stay, and so we've got a perfect storm working for us in a good sense, right? So the perfect storm is we have generally high vaccination rates, which those individuals are not required to quarantine, or we've had individuals that have had COVID within the last 90 days and have a natural immunity. So with that being said, with the low transmission rate right now within the school environment, only 14 within the last week, that's actually a really good scenario. We've only had a few people that have actually taken us up on the Test to Stay option. Obviously, 1 is in quarantine right now, or 2 are in quarantine. But that is an option for our families. Our goal in the whole Test to Stay model was that we would be able to allow our students to be able to return to school without the need to quarantine unless they tested positive or exhibiting symptoms in some way. So once again, our ramp up, we don't have a lot of data right now, just simply because we have not had to implement, which is a good thing.
Okay, I just was curious because I know it has to be a tricky thing to navigate because students that have had COVID, students that are vaccinated, the privacy and the data of things. So I just was curious what that impact was. But that makes a lot of sense that you don't have a lot of data on that. I mean, that makes sense. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, anyone else, or? Okay, I'll go back to my question then. I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this semantically. So I guess my basic question is, our current guidance is for students and staff that we strongly recommend masks. In reality, the CDC guidance does no longer strongly recommend masks in a K-12 setting or pre-K-12 setting. So my question is, should we downgrade our guidance to say that masks are basically personal choice to make sure that we're in alignment with current CDC guidance? If there are staff members that are uncomfortable, maybe want to not wear a mask, or even students that don't want to wear a mask, but since we're staying strongly recommended, it seems like it's a little bit out of alignment with the current CDC guidance, which actually says they no longer recommend them. And it could be that for our district, we feel that we want to say that, and I just wanted to get other board members' opinions on that, and your opinion, Dr. Stanley, about the actual semantics we're using from that perspective.
I guess my question about that would be, so CDC is one body. I guess I would want to see clearly what our other organizations or other entities that we rely on would feel like that, but I'm not opposed to what you're saying. But I'd want to get a few more pieces of data about it, but it's a good point.
What is the verbiage of the next step down?
The CDC doesn't necessarily offer specific verbiage. The verbiage that I've seen, though, is mask recommended, mask optional.
Like that. It's vague, but it's not necessarily strongly recommended, and so I just didn't know. It's not that out of alignment, but I just want to make sure that we're very clear about what we are saying, and in practicality, if people aren't paying attention, which hopefully not everyone in the community listens to every single board meeting, because that takes a lot of time. If someone just looks at this and says, oh, the district is still saying strongly recommended, I want to make sure that we're very explicit about what we mean by what we're saying.
And I appreciate that question. I do. And I need to think about that a little bit more, because I don't know if going through and changing all the language will have much of a different effect in the long run. But I do appreciate that question. I need to think of that personally.
So maybe it's something that we just look into, how other entities are utilizing it, and maybe it's not, we come back with a recommendation. And I don't think it's a game changer. I just, again, want to make sure that we're being consistent. Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, no, I have two thoughts. One is I would love to get Dr. Kelly's thought on that. As just a checkpoint for us, we have our partnership with Bloomington Health has been really informative over the last 2 years. And then my second thought is I like the question, and I think just anecdotally in the community, a lot of people are going on spring break. We have people going all over the world, leaving the country. And so to me, I think I would veer on the side of staying where we are right now, and then at spring break, we go. I'm not a doctor, that's just my own personal opinion, but I know a lot of families are choosing right now to mask so they can get on their trips. there's Hawaii, you still have to test to go there. And so that's where my thoughts are. But I think it'd be something that we definitely should think about and talk about again.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, how will parents see the communication and information about the bus masking change? Because that's a big change, a big change, and I want to make sure that people are going to see that.
I've just invited our communications director, Mary Odie, up to share about that.
Good evening, everybody. We have an email prepared to go out to families tomorrow, and then we'll also have this information posted on the website, so we'll update the COVID pages that we have. And then we have the e-newsletter comes out on Thursday, so we'll reiterate this again there.
And is the change as of tomorrow, as of when they get the email?
Yes, right?
As of Wednesday.
Yes.
As of
Well,
Wednesday.
yes, so,
Yeah,
yes, I'm
okay.
thinking tomorrow, Wednesday, when they get it, it'll say tomorrow.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. Great. That it? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smazel. Next, for our discussion, we have our policy review. Board Member Green, we have policies 213, 217, 606, and 613.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. We have 4 policies on for discussion tonight. Just as a quick overview for the community and members here in front of us right now. Policy committee makes up, there's 3 of us on the board that sit on the policy committee. We do routine reviews of policies. And then we also, every 3 years, and there's also policies that need to be reviewed by state statute every year. All policies are cross-referenced with MSBA and state statute. We also look for an I for EPS and expectations that we have here as a district and our perspective, and then we work with the administration and partnership on things. So I just thought a quick overview on policy would be a good policy 101. So let's start with policy 213. Policy 213 is school board committees. I don't know if any board members have any questions, but we as a board approved, as you guys all recall, the Legislative Action Committee to become an official board committee. And so the language that is used in the policy mirrors the bylaws that we passed in January. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about policy 213.
I meant to actually ask you this earlier. I think under G2, is that right, meant for policy committee?
Hang on, I'm pulling it up.
Or is that meant for, I'm sorry, that's on page
95. Page 95.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah. I was like,
Oh.
Or are you relating to policies for the Legislative Action Committee?
I think that we should strike that line.
Okay, I was wondering, okay.
And the reason for that is, so this was following the same format of the policy, part of the
That's what
policy.
I thought, but, okay.
No, that's a good catch.
Okay, all right, thank you.
A couple of quick questions on LAC.
Sure.
First, there's like a lettering or numbering issue. So under Edina Public Schools, School Board Legislative Action Committee, starts with E, should start with A. The other thing is, there is the Legislative Action Committee, but then we talk about the LAC Steering Committee. So I think that the Steering Committee is supposed to be the Action Committee.
We talked about this in, when we presented the LAC. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but we had talked about the steering committee being the leadership committee, and the action committee is phase 2 of how we're bringing LAC back with community members. That wouldn't necessarily be the steering committee, but to expand that. So the plan was when we come back with, as we start to roll out the plan for recruitment, what that looks like. But that's why it's in here the way that it is, because they're right now kind of two different groups working together. So
What is the steering committee?
the steering committee right now is member Aram and myself, Dr. Stanley, and Dr. oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Director Jorgensen.
So the policy, though, says that the steering committee includes community members. So it's the broader one. Under F?
Right, eventually it would, next year.
Right, but we're adopting this, we want to adopt this policy now. So if we adopt it now, you have a steering committee that has community members now.
Got it, okay.
So, because it wasn't clear to me when I read it, I thought it was just old language.
Right, no, that's how we had it set up that way. I mean, that was on purpose. But if that's confusing, I think part of it is that LAC right now is being regenerated and evolving, and so we're in this spot for it, so.
So I would just recommend that whatever status exists this year should be reflected in the policy. And if you want to put a note here that says that in the future it'll be somewhat different aligned.
Lenny, does it make any difference that it says, in addition, the committee may include? Does that kind of cover it for this year and next?
So I just think that there's a lack of clarity about what the Legislative Action Committee is versus the Legislative Action Steering Committee. So if you could just get some level of clarity, that might be better.
No, that's a good question and a good point, and we can take it back and look at that. I mean, this is how we have it in the bylaws that we approved. So the bylaws currently are this way, set this way, so maybe we would then need to change those as well. Is that?
Well, I didn't go back and read the bylaws. By the way.
No, that is, I mean, Karen's point that we put may in there, and we did that because as we're evolving and figuring out how this is going to look and make sure we're.
So the steering committee is a subset of the
The
action
steering committee is the leadership of the LAC, correct?
I think I would just then add a note about that. I think it's not an either or, I think it's a both and here, and I just think it's a clarification sentence about the Legislative Action Committee is composed of a steering committee, and then, however you want to phrase it. But I think it's a both and, that's all.
Right, and our bylaws are written that if our steering committee, if we decided and it made sense to have a few community members who were wanting to step up in that leadership role, it allows for us to do that, but we don't know if we have those community members. And right now it's Dan and I, working with the administration. So if we add in a qualifier, does that answer your question, Lenny?
Just something that creates a little clarity as to what the different functions are.
Okay.
I like Janie's suggestion.
Yeah, I think hers is fine. And then we have a minimum of 2 students. So if we don't have 2 students who volunteer, I think we might have a target of 2 students. I don't know if we want a minimum of. And again, maybe that's
Well, this is again evolving what our goal would be, because the goal would be in our bylaws that we had talked about was to make sure we have at least 2 students. I wouldn't recommend actually just having 1. We kind of thought through that and talked about that a lot. So.
But you can do that just by saying the committee may include a maximum of 9 committee members and 2 student, and in addition 2 student members. I don't know, just take a look at it.
Well, I think the most important piece here is that we make sure that the bylaws match up with this. And so wordsmithing it, I want to make sure. So my recommendation would be then to go back, Dan and I will take a look at it and look at the bylaws as we're kind of rolling out a recommendation for how recruitment will work. So maybe we just put this on pause until that conversation happens too. Because our bylaws are working right now, the way that we're operating. Is the board okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure, great. Those are great questions. Next up is policy 217, which is legislative involvement, and there is just one change, and this is board legislative involvement, and it was just to identify and align us with that and acknowledge that there's now a legislative action committee that is also working through legislative items. So.
This is totally nitpicky, but shouldn't there be apostrophe in schools?
Oh, you probably, yeah.
Edina Public Schools.
Possessive.
Yeah, and that's in the other policy as well. Sorry.
No, that's not. We are a school system. We should
I'm
catch
sorry.
apostrophes.
Is there not a board policy that has actually review from staff so that they can correct all the grammatical concerns for this?
Really?
We are a public education organization.
We'll send it to the writing lab.
That's right. Any other changes other than the apostrophe? Okay, great. And that one will go to action next month. Okay, then next up, I'd like to invite up Director D. St. Hubert, Policy 606, which is selection and review of instructional text, materials, content, or issues.
Hold on. Okay, good evening, Dr. Stanley and Chair Ellenberg and board members. Policy 606 has, we have edited with a couple of minor changes to what was in it in the past. And so I think the biggest goal would be to see if there's any questions from the group.
I'll just point out that there's a numbering issue, but that's okay, since we're doing that. I normally wouldn't have done it, but under B, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. So I'm just,
All the apostrophes look accurate, though.
Yes, thank you.
I assume this was mostly just to make sure all of our ducks are in a row for immersion and all that.
Yes, there is an immersion component added in under the section that you're in right now, Janie. As Julie, Board Chair Green mentioned, we did look at MSBA policy and just compared to make sure that everything is up to date and alignment.
Great.
I just had one question about Appendix 3, and Item 3 is supplementary materials. Does that include or what's kind of included in that?
Is it Appendix 3, supplementary materials?
It's page 108.
Okay. Well, the primary, we've talked through this a little bit in alignment with our curriculum review process and where this falls within that. And so it is a variety of materials, and this would be primarily things that teachers are choosing to enhance what is the core of what's within the classroom. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions? Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move this to action for next month. Thank you. And then the last policy is Policy 613, graduation requirements. This, as you recall, we discussed last month. Since then, we have gotten some feedback from the community, and some board members had additional questions, and the administration wanted some more time to look into and provide some more clarity around the graduation requirements, especially in terms of math. And so that is why we are recommending that it go back to policy committee to have a deeper discussion and take a look at that. So that's what we're proposing to the board instead of it going to action. And the other thing I wanted to clarify too is that there was a little bit of confusion and understanding that any changes that are made to graduation requirements our current high school students are grandfathered in. So just want to make sure that anyone listening understands that that's it. So any changes, and there's no changes happening right now, that would not impact the current students. Were you going to say something, Karen?
No, I was just going to say I support moving it back to policy.
Okay, thank you.
So when you take a look at the effective date and which group it impacts, since kids are accelerating in middle school, then you may want to look at the effective date different depending upon what opportunities we've set up for kids to accelerate. Because by the time they're in ninth grade, they may already have a couple of years of high school.
That's a great point.
And Lenny, in your opinion, if I could ask, that's the only one that has 9 through 12? If we remove that language, does that solve this problem?
Oh, yeah, I believe so.
And does
So-
anybody know why that was added in the first place?
You know, hold on, I don't mean to stop, but I think this is, we aren't prepared to talk about this from a content standpoint, so that's why we're bringing it back to policy. And I don't know then if it actually would be recommended then to go to teaching and learning to look at some of these items, but, so I don't want to get too far into a discussion because we're not prepared for that. Okay, so we'll take it back to policy committee.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Director
sure.
Green, can I ask one quick question, just so I'm clear on the board committee policy? I'd have to go back and get my numbers right. Where, will that come to action next month, or that's going to go, because you and Dan are going to look at it?
Oh, for the
Where will we
LAC?
see- Yes.
For LAC, we will go back. My thought, and I want to talk to Dan about this, is that when we come back with like, here's our recruitment plan, that's when we will bring that part back.
Okay, so we will not see that policy back next month. I just want to make sure
No,
that
unless we could bring it back
my
for discussion.
expectations are, okay.
Unless we bring it back for discussion,
Okay.
correct.
I just want to set expectations. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for the question. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our action items. Do I have a motion to approve the 2022-2023 general fund budget?
So moved.
Second.
I was going to say Director Tope. We have all sorts of new titles for everyone tonight, so welcome.
Chef Tope.
Chef Tope.
Before Director Tope gets started, I did get a couple of questions that came through, and I wanted to make sure that we got some clarity on that. There was a question related to the two new pathways, and specifically dual Spanish immersion, and wondering about administrative coverage for that. So for the 2022-2023 school year, we are working and outlined this actually in our process when we brought that to the board to outline what the program would look like, because it's only 2 classes. We know that we are not going to need a full-time administrator, or quite honestly, even a .1 administrator. And so we have partnered with Val Burke and know that we are going to be able to utilize, because we have analyze schedules and timing, we know that we are going to be able to utilize some of the supports from Leah Berg, who is right now. Now, we've done a time study. We know that she has it, and it's 10 hours. It is not like a half time or anything like that, because it is 2 classes. The other thing is, we have several individuals who are in teaching and learning, who are in, my district office, Randy, me, Jody. Several individuals have administrator's license as well. And so in the event that there was some additional need, we'd be able to do that. But we just believe that it is too early on right now to add an administrator. Having said that, Randy is working with Sonia Saylor, and just so that you remember the name, she is our new Human Resources Director, and looking at what that support will look like once the Spanish immersion pathway moves into Countryside, because we know that's going to be additional supports that will be needed at Countryside. In no way, shape, or form, though, in our time study, we know that this is not going to take away from early learning center supports. We know that that doesn't mean that we're going to have a reduction in early learning center or any, supports. Like, we wouldn't be able to have as many courses. Hopefully we'll have more, maybe. So we know that this is not going to impact in an adverse way our early learning center programming for that. We just I believe it's too early to move in administrative support right now. So that was one of the questions that came up. And then the other question that came up was kind of related to that. It was, we are adding $50,000 into communications budget so that we can really work to advertise for the virtual online pathway without, once again, adding in administrative oversight and time. So John has worked with Jody, worked with Randy, and worked with Sean and Mike right now are really helping to develop that. And they've worked to develop a budget. And we are going to know more once we know our final numbers. We'll really be able to know what level of administrative support is needed. So in the event, let's just say that we end up with 400 students in online, there would definitely be administrative support that would be aligned there. We'd be tighter on our budget to be able to figure that out at that time. And again, similar to what we did, what we were able to do with Sean this year, we have individuals that we'd be able to assign to that position, if you will. So it's just too soon. We don't know our numbers yet. And it's too soon to say, do we need a half-time administrator? What that role of that administrator would be. Is that going to be an AP? Is it going to be a dean? What that would be. It's just too soon for us. And so I would ask that you give us a little bit more time on that before we declared that, because I'm honestly, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible at this point around that. And then last question that came in is the percent of our budget for administrative funding is at 3.2%, which is remarkably lower than some of our neighboring districts. Tonka has 5.2%, Wayzata 4.8%, and Hopkins 6.2%. Being fiscally responsible, I think that's a good thing, because we want our monies to go into our classrooms. And the question was, do we see an increase, possibly the need for an increase? The increases that I discussed, looking at what are those needs going to be when we move the Spanish dual language immersion into Countryside. What is that additional administrative support going to be? Definitely what we're looking at. And then that idea of what is the administrative supports that we're going to need for our virtual online pathway for EVP. That is where I would see that increase with administration right now. Okay, so having said all of that, Director Tope.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Stanley, and members of the board. The board's fully aware that we started our budgeting process on January 10th when the board approved the budget parameters. Those are attached to the report. The report starts on page 110 of your packet. I'm going to focus starting on page 114, just like I did in the board workshop on February 24th, by just telling the public and the board members that we did focus on some high-level budget assumptions, some of which had changed a little bit since we approved the budget parameters on January 10th. So knowing that those things change, we want to make sure that we adjust for those within our budgeting, at least as far as having the board approve it on a preliminary basis. So in that board workshop, we talked about our federal stimulus carry-in, that I was projecting $2 million of estimated revenues, although we're carrying into the expenditure calculations $3.7 million of expenses. That's what was in our fiscal 21-22 budget. We don't know how that's all going to come out at the end of 21-22, but it's a conservative estimate and it gives us some flexibility. I also explained that we had overestimated special ed aid for 2021 due to a staff person that had left, and we had gotten our data in late, so I had to do an estimate. Thought it was going to be pretty close. I was a little over on that estimate, so that impacts 21-22 as well as 22-23. So you see that adjustment downward in special ed state aid as an estimate. The next thing we talked about was licensed retiree replacement savings. We had been averaging historically about 11 teacher retirees per year. Last year was 15.02, and this year it's at least 26.8. What does that do for us? Well, each retiree that we replace, at least on an average basis, we would hire at a lower rate, which would generate about $30,000 of replacement savings. At 11 teacher FTEs, that replacement savings would be about $330,000, and at 26.8 FTEs replaced, it would be at least $804,000. We continued on with the elementary virtual pathway. That was included in the fiscal 21-22 revised budget, so that's moved forward into 22-23's preliminary budget as is, and we do have a 0.3, as Dr. Stanley mentioned. We already have some administrative time in there for the Edina Virtual Academy, and that's just the elementary. We are studying. I met with Sean Beaverson and Michael Walker last week. We're really trying to vet that out as far as how many open enrollment kids do we need that aren't in our projected ADM over here, because that's one number over here. How many more open enrollment students do we need to pay for the MOU that is with the teachers union as far as paying them for doing online classes? So we're trying to work that out, and we had a pretty good meeting last Friday, and they're going to get some more research, do some more research, and I think we're going to meet again, and I can't remember the date, but we're going to meet again and start vetting that out. And like Dr. Stanley said, we will have more information on that as we go along. And I know we did talk about that at the board workshop also, and that's a bullet point here in the high-level assumptions, is that right now I have that as cost neutral. If we get enough open enrollment students, we might be able to generate revenue from that on the online staffing. So we don't know what that number is yet. It's revenue neutral right now. If we have a better idea, which we will, as we move along, then we'll change that number. We also have the dual language Spanish immersion staffing, 2 additional classes, but we're reducing 1 kindergarten class for an increase of about $125,000. No school election next year, and then Dr. Stanley talked about the increase in the marketing budget. We have some other parameters that I'm using for licensed staff, salary schedule changes and administrative changes, other staff, health insurance benefits, purchase services, supplies. And then Dr. Stanley referenced it in her remarks. We also provided you with some comparisons to other districts around us in the budget package. And then we also, I had a graph in there that shows the gen ed formula allowance, the history of that. I'm sure a lot of board members might be getting information from AMSD. They released some information this morning saying about $230 million in reductions across their 47-member districts. So still looking at reductions. You can see on the graph that I provided, the gen ed formula allowance has went up at least 2% over the last 9 consecutive years. The comparisons that we had with our neighboring districts, and we did go over these at the board workshop, we compare favorably in the areas that you want to be low spending in, and we compare very favorably in the areas that you might want to be higher in spending. So I think that was good information for the board and the public to see. And then I gave you some information on capacities in the different buildings. When we modify and use those high-level assumptions that are different from what the board approved on January 10th, we are looking at a slight deficit. It's less than 1% in our budget of about $807,000 for fiscal 22-23. We are asking the board to approve the budget utilizing $807,000 of our assigned for comprehensive literacy and virtual programming to cover that deficit. So we will have no reductions next year if we can do that. So it would be a maintenance year. Again, with the flux of federal funding that we have right now and not knowing how much of that will be spent and how much will carry over to next year, I think it's a real good idea if we look at it that way, gather more information in March, April, and May here as the legislature does their work. They might provide additional funding. We'll see. There certainly is some pressure after the last forecast that they might provide additional funding. So with that, again, we have a slight deficit. We're asking to use an assignment off of positive audit results from 2021. So we assigned $1.7 million specifically for comprehensive literacy and virtual programming. That's what we're asking to use that assignment for the following year, fiscal 22-23. So I will stop there, see if there's questions from board members.
Carrie?
I have a couple. Director Tope and Superintendent Stanley, just to make sure that the correct information is out there, when you speak of taking some of that money from the comprehensive literacy plan, I don't want that to throw up red flags. Could you speak in a little bit more detail to that? Thank you.
I can start, and maybe Dr. Stanley can finish. We knew when we started to get our federal stimulus dollars that Dr. Stanley and the board had pushed for a comprehensive literacy program. Director D. St. Hubert is implementing that program right now. So we have hired staff. We are paying for some of those staff members with federal funds. We also started the Edina Elementary virtual programming, which wasn't in the budget that was approved last June. I included in the revised budget. So now we're able to carry forward that EEVP budget into 22-23, and we're still only looking at a deficit of $807,000, and we're still going to continue our comprehensive literacy program moving forward into 22-23. So I'll stop there and let Dr. Stanley add.
Yeah, so I can't remember which month it was. I feel like it was November or December. John came to the board and he shared that we were awarded an additional $1.2 million for Esser Funds. And so what John is saying is we believe with the federal funds, we are going to be able to, we know we are going to be able to continue our efforts with comprehensive literacy. There will be no reduction. There will be no concern about moving forward with our comprehensive literacy programming, whether it is our efforts around letters, whether it is our efforts around everything that we're doing with the data in the classroom, utilizing the curriculum, making certain that we have instructional matches. None of that will go away. We will have all of those things continued in place.
And just to add one more point, that the money that was put into the literacy bucket was put there for an accounting reason because of what bucket it was going into. We decided to overfund that budget for what was asked for so that it was allocated correctly rather than being unallocated. And now we're able to, given this deficit, be able to use those funds to make that up. So that's a really key part. That was an accounting element of allocated versus unallocated to be able to address that.
I would just add that we spent those federal funds last year to the highest degree possible so that we could take this assignment, like Director Birdman is mentioning, so that it's our control, not the federal dollars that are controlling it. So we did that on purpose, so that we have that flexibility moving forward.
Great. Thank you all for that explanation. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Superintendent Stanley, when does EVVP come to the board?
We've moved that around, but I believe it's April 14th. March 14th. It is March
next Monday.
14th. Thank you. Oh, it's a week from now.
Okay. And then my last question, Director Tope, do you know when do we feel like we will have a better idea about virtual numbers, knowing that that's obviously fluid, but enrollment has started, correct?
You'll also get an update on that on March 14th.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Did you have?
No, I actually don't have any questions, Dr. Stanley. Thank you for answering my questions at the beginning of the
Anyone
meeting.
else?
So,
No one? Oh, okay, great. Okay, we will now vote to approve the 2022-2023 general fund budget. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The 2022-2023 general fund budget is approved. Thank you, Director
Thank you,
Tope.
Chair Ellenberg.
Do I have a motion to approve policies 425 and 522?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Green.
yes, so we have two policies up for action tonight, Policy 425 and Policy 522. These were for discussion last month. There was no real substantial changes in the discussion, and they are ready to go. So if anyone has any questions on either one of them? No? Excellent. So they are ready for action. Chair Allenberg.
Okay, we'll now vote to approve 425 and 522. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Policies 425, oh, anyone opposed? Okay. All those, oh, wait, okay. Policies 425 and 522 are approved. Do I have a motion to approve the April 18th change in school calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Who wants to claim it? Karen? Karen Gabler. Dr. Stanley? Or is that Director Superintendent Smalsel? Someone has to talk about it.
Can't.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Smalsel.
Good evening again. We are here to discuss that April 18th proposed data day for the school district. The proposal for this day would provide teachers with one final planning day to review learning data, to create an instructional plan for the remainder of the school year, which would be about 7 weeks. This additional preparation day would greatly enhance our teachers' abilities to address learning needs in what has been a year that is non-typical. Childcare options would be available for families, and all of our employee groups will be working this day either on current projects in preparation for that final learning push or that final learning window, or they may be in professional training that we have an opportunity to complete yet this year. So on a day-to-day, our teachers would typically not have meetings. They would have the opportunity to work in their collaborative teams and partner with each other as they review data and put together their plans for student learning.
Thank you. Questions from board members?
Can I just ask a quick question? So I know there's been conversations with the principals, and are they in support? I'm thinking more secondary. I know we're bumping up against AP testing. So did you get, was there any feedback, or what is the pulse at the high school?
Yeah, we did have good feedback both from staff and from our leadership and in support of the idea. There were a few concerns about advanced placement content and then losing a day. Some teachers were neutral on the concept, but over 90% of our staff were supportive of the idea.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And will there be childcare availability for parents?
Yep, there will be childcare availability. We have been working with Val and her team to make sure that that's an option for families.
And similar question to the busing, how will this be communicated to parents, and when will they find out?
in the same email that's going out tomorrow.
Thank you, Mary. That was Mary from the corner for anyone that. Any other questions for board members? Nope. Okay, we will now vote to approve the April 18th change in school calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The April 18th change in school calendar is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to board leadership and committee updates. The only update I have is I wanted to let everyone know that we're finally going to take our board photos before the next board meeting. So that will be the April regular board meeting at 4:45. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. And that's the only update I have. Any committee updates? Dr. Stanley, any superintendent updates?
Well, I started to share a little bit earlier. Was just out with my colleagues, assistant superintendents, and actually brought in directors of special education with our 7-member district consortium of high-performing districts. And those days are an intense time. We go from 8 a.m. until 10:30 at night. We are constantly in groups, and we're breaking down and digesting the information. We received an amazing presentation from a professor from Stanford on student mental health and wellness, and just really spoke to a lot of the work that we're already doing in the district, and just solidified why we need to have the focus that we have on student mental health and wellness, really looking at the whole child. He provided some really staggering statistics, quite honestly, related to students who die by suicide. And as I was writing down notes, I just thought, we have some things that are in place to make certain that we're taking care of our kids, and we can definitely continue to get better. So it was, and always is, an amazing experience. Really pushes me to think differently as a superintendent. I know that it pushes. Randy and Jeff and I talked about this on our way back, and all during the time that we were there, and just really appreciate being with leaders and in systems that just push us to be better. And it's kind of funny because I hear from them that we're pushing them to be better, and that's really important when you have a high-performing district like ours. They are coming to Edina in the fall, and so we are really excited to be able to welcome them in and help them to learn about some great things that we are doing. We are going to determine in the next couple of months if we will extend this idea of really looking at student supports. Do we need to dig deeper into that, or if there's another area of focus that we need to go into? So I want to say thank you for that opportunity to continue to allow us to go out, because it is incredibly important for us to continue to thrive and strive to be the best.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. If there's no other updates, then we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.